Well, hey everyone, I'm Jay Withrow, and if you join me for the first video of the series, then so glad you're back, and if it's your first time, welcome to the Multilingual Worship series. In the last video, we covered team planning, and that's the starting point, but then we move on, and now we're looking at my favorite part of the multilingual process, which is music arranging. So in the last video, we talked about the vision for multilingual worship from Revelation 7 and John 17. And so in this video, we get to start putting flesh and bones on that vision by creating custom music arrangements with custom translations. And that's definitely the word custom because nothing in this process is standard. And of course, it's much more involved than a regular one language arrangement, which is awesome, but it takes some know-how. So I'm going to take you behind the curtain, so to speak, and show you my process, and I'll do it from start to finish. So let's go. So here's our starting point, a nice blank canvas here. And I'm using a program called Planning Center to create this chart, and I'll be using a bracket chord format. Now I have a whole video with a link in the description that teaches how to create a bracket chord chart if you need that or if you're interested. So the song we're going to be creating this custom arrangement for is the song Our God by Chris Tomlin. One of the big reasons I chose this song is because in the previous team planning phase that we talked about in our last video, well, when my team discussed songs, we found out there were already translations in each of the three languages we needed that were readily available online. And the three languages for us are English, Spanish, and Kaya. So that was going to help make things way simpler for us and cut down a lot on the time and the translation work. Now, the first step of arranging with multiple languages in mind is finding a legitimate version of the song in each language. And you can either do that on your own if you know all the languages well enough, or you'll need to find help to do that. But whether it's on your own or with help, once you do find the right versions, then my go-to spot for actually getting the tracks is iTunes. Or, of course, you could use some other app that allows you to purchase tracks. And if a track isn't available for download for some reason, then I'll resort to YouTube. But I prefer to be able to download all the tracks because I want to have the ability to edit them and transpose each track so that they're all in the same key. And that's because when the band and choir are practicing during the week, I always think it's best that they're able to sing and play along to the track in the actual key we'll be doing the song in during the service. It just makes for a way better and more accurate practice experience, I think. So once you get all that squared away, then you're able to sit down and begin crafting the arrangement. So here's where you need to decide what order the languages will appear in and what sections each language will cover. And so for the sections, we're going to have verse 1 and chorus 1 in English, verse 2 and chorus 2, which is a double chorus, in Spanish. The bridge will go back to English, and then a double chorus at the end in Kaya. Now, the different song versions that we're compiling the lyrics from have variation from song to song in the section arrangements. So when you're creating your own arrangement, you'll get to choose how you want to chop things up, how you want the song map to be. And for me, when I was considering how to arrange the sections, I took two things into account. One is, who do I have leading the service? Who are they and what are they capable of skill-wise? And the second consideration would be about the languages. How well known are these languages by everyone? And what are the percentages of representation for each of the languages? And so for us, since English is our majority language and is the language best understood, it can be really nice for the band and our choir and the church to start off singing in the language they know best because it'll be the strongest. It'll give confidence and a strong start to help everyone engage in the song. So after English, then I'll start to introduce the other languages. And you need to keep in mind that the volume of singing will drop when you switch to a lesser known language. It can even cut out pretty severely if it's a language that only a handful of people know. So consider that in your arranging, as well as how you communicate to your audio team, to your choir, what they need to do to help keep that volume drop from being too extreme and to help keep things more even, like volume and energy-wise. And you'll notice that I have the bridge in English, and that's because of that very reason. Since the bridge only happens once, I want it to be in the majority language so that it'll be nice and strong and loud when we hit that part. Now, the next step is to just copy and paste the lyrics into each section. For this song, I oversaw the English lyrics, and then I had someone else figure out the Spanish and someone else figure out the Kaya. And then we all shared the translations and transliterations in a Google Doc, and that allows me to just copy and paste the lyrics into the chart where I need them. So once I finished doing that, I organized the stanzas to have a certain amount of lines per stanza, which goes along with how my graphics team wants to display them on our screens. And that's something I'll dive into in depth in the next video, which is all about how to display the languages and what to consider. But for now in this video, we're just focused, of course, purely on arranging. So now everything is organized, I double check it, and then I can go about actually inserting the bracket chords into each lyric line. I do want to mention though that oftentimes when we're creating a normal one language chord chart, something that we'll often do to save time or to save ink or space on a screen is, for instance, if each verse of a song has the same exact chords, we might only put the chords in verse 1 and then not put any chords in verse 2 or 3 or 4 because it's understood that the band can play the exact same thing they played in verse 1 for all the other verses, right? But when you have multiple languages, here's what can happen. If you are, let's say, an acoustic player and a singer, so you're playing and singing at the same time, then you might find it pretty hard to remember which word is supposed to be sung with a particular chord change. And this is especially noticeable if it's a pretty difficult language and one you're just not familiar with. And if that's the case, then you may need to put the chords in every single section to help make sure you're singing the right word at the right time. That's just something I found helpful over the years. All right, so now that the chords have all been placed, I go back and I look over things. I make sure things are formatted just the way I like. I like to have double spacing between particular sections. It just looks clearer to me. And it's easier for me to see the separate sections if I'm standing far off from my iPad. I also try my best to fit everything on one page, which I was just barely able to do on this chart, but I did make it happen. And I also check to make sure my naming scheme is consistent, that I'm not missing any colons or anything. I'm sure I missed something on this chart, right? So let me know what I missed. But well, now, as we look at what we think is our finished product, one thing that you may be thinking, because I'm thinking it too, is, man, there are so many lyrics on this chart. It is very crowded. And I would agree, completely, I agree. So for my band and tech crew and our setup, I keep things like this because it helps us to have the least moving parts or room for error for our band and our choir and our graphics team. We need all the data, the lyrics, the chords, the translations, all in one place. And our software planning center allows us to display a chart like this in different ways. We can have it display as a number chart. We can take the chords out and just have lyrics. But what I do for my personal chord chart is I only want the lead language to be shown for each section. And the lead language is just the language that's actually being sung during each section. So to do this, there's actually a couple different ways I could do it, but one is to import this chart directly into the app I use called OnSong, which is what I use with my iPad on stage, and then I can further edit it from there. Or I could keep everything in-house right here in Planning Center and just create a different arrangement. To do that, I go to the arrangement view page, duplicate the one I just made, and name it something like ESK lead language, English, Spanish, Kaya lead language. Then I just delete all the excess translations for each section so that I'm left with just the pure lead language for each part. And look at this. See how much clearer and cleaner it is? So those are some options for you if you or someone else on your team needs just a less cluttered chart. And that's what I do to create a custom arrangement. I then go back to the song/arrangement view here, and I make sure all my tracks that are attached to the key, that they are all labeled correctly with the different language names. And I'll even listen through a bit to make sure they're all transposed into the correct key. And now my band and choir are ready to practice with the tracks and their charts at home. Well, that's it, y'all. I hope you enjoyed seeing my process. Please leave any questions in the comments, and of course, please like and subscribe. So the next video in the series will cover how to display multiple languages, and then continuing in the series, I'll talk about how to lead a rehearsal, and then how to approach the actual leading with multiple languages. So until then, y'all, have a great one. I'll see you there.